Listen carefully, because this is not just another message passing through your screen. This is not coincidence. This is not random timing. This is a divine interruption, and it has your name written all over it. There was a moment, just recently, when something inside you shifted. You may not have said it out loud. You may not have even fully understood it. But deep within, there was a whisper, a quiet, persistent feeling that something isn't right. That something has been building. That something has been pushing against your peace. And no matter how much you tried to ignore it, distract yourself, or explain it away, it kept returning. You've been feeling tired in a way sleep cannot fix. You've been carrying thoughts that don't belong to you. You've been facing resistance that doesn't make sense. Small things have felt heavier. Simple moments have felt overwhelming. And the strange part is no one else seems to notice. No one else seems to understand why you've been so quiet lately, why your energy has shifted, why your spirit feels like it's been in a fight that no one else can see. But hear this now. You are not imagining it. There has been a battle. A silent one. A spiritual one. A battle that didn't need noise to shake you. A battle that didn't need chaos to exhaust you. It worked in subtle ways, through doubt, through delay, through emotional weight, through confusion that came out of nowhere. And you kept pushing. You kept showing up. You kept trying to hold yourself together, even when something inside you felt like it was slipping. And here's the truth that changes everything. This message found you because heaven refused to let you fight this alone any longer. Archangel Michael, the warrior of divine protection, has stepped forward, not because you are weak, but because you are at the edge of something powerful. You have reached a point where the battle cannot continue the same way. Something must break. Something must shift. Something must end. And it ends tonight. But before that ending comes, you need to understand something deeply personal. Something that will unlock everything that follows. You were not randomly placed in this struggle. You were not accidentally caught in this storm. You were chosen to stand in it. Because there is something inside you, something rare, something spiritually significant that the pressure has been trying to suppress. Every delay you experienced, every moment of doubt, every unexpected obstacle, it wasn't meaningless. It was resistance reacting to your potential. It was opposition responding to your calling. That's why it feels so intense. That's why it feels so targeted. That's why it feels like it won't let up. But tonight something changes. Right now, as you're hearing these words, there is a shift already beginning in the unseen. A stillness is forming around you. A clarity is trying to rise through the noise. And even if you can't fully explain it yet, there is a part of you that feels it. A quiet knowing that this moment is different. That this message is not like the others. At this time something is actually going to break. You've been holding on longer than most would. You've stayed standing when it would have been easier to collapse. You've kept believing, even when the evidence around you told you to stop. And now, heaven is responding to that persistence. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Tonight. So don't scroll past this moment. Don't dismiss what your spirit is trying to recognize. Don't talk yourself out of what you already feel rising within you. Because this isn't just a message. This is your turning point. This is where the battle begins to end. And you were meant to be here for it. Type "I am ready" in the comments if you feel this message aligning with your spirit. Blessing code 1717 is now activated around you. You've been carrying something that no one else can fully see, and that's what has made this battle feel so isolating. On the outside, everything may look normal. You still show up. You still speak when needed. You still move through your days with a sense of responsibility. But on the inside, there has been a constant tension, a quiet pressure that hasn't let you rest. It's as if your spirit has been fighting a war in silence, and no one around you has realized just how heavy it has become. There were moments when you questioned yourself. You wondered if you were overthinking, if you were being too sensitive, if maybe this was just a phase that would pass. But every time you tried to dismiss it, the feeling returned, stronger and more persistent. That uneasiness in your chest, that weight in your thoughts, that subtle draining of your energy, it was never random. It was never meaningless. It was the evidence of a hidden battle that has been unfolding in the background of your life. This battle did not begin loudly. It did not announce itself with chaos or destruction. Instead, it entered quietly, through small cracks in your emotional and spiritual space. It showed up as delays that didn't make sense, as confusion in moments where you once had clarity, as sudden waves of doubt that interrupted your confidence. It worked through subtle discouragement, making you question things you once felt certain about. And over time, it began to wear you down, not all at once, but little by little. You kept going, though. Even when your energy felt low, you kept pushing forward. Even when your mind felt crowded, you tried to stay focused. Even when your spirit felt heavy, you refused to completely give up. And that persistence is important, because it reveals something powerful about you. It shows that despite everything working against your peace, there has always been something within you that refused to collapse. There has always been a part of you that knew, even if you couldn't explain it, that this was not how your story was meant to end. But the truth is, this battle has been more than emotional. It has been spiritual in nature, even if you did have the words to describe it. You've been encountering resistance that doesn't follow logic, opposition that feels targeted, and patterns that seem to repeat just when you're about to move forward. That is not coincidence. That is not bad luck. That is a sign that what you carry has value, and anything of value attracts resistance. There were nights when your thoughts wouldn't quiet down, when your mind replayed situations over and over, searching for answers that never came. There were days when even small tasks felt heavier than they should, when your motivation seemed to disappear without reason. There were moments when you felt disconnected, not just from people, but from yourself, as if something was interfering with your sense of clarity. And through all of this, you continued to ask yourself the same question. Why does this feel so hard right now? The answer is not meant to discourage you, but to awaken you. You have been in the middle of a battle that was never meant to destroy you, but to challenge you, to test your awareness, and to prepare you for a shift that is now approaching. Every moment of confusion was pushing you to seek deeper understanding. Every delay was forcing you to develop patience and strength. Every wave of doubt was an invitation to anchor yourself more firmly in truth. And yet, even with all of this, there were times when you felt like you were losing ground. Times when you felt like no matter how much effort you gave, the outcome didn't change. That feeling of stagnation, of being stuck in the same cycle, have been one of the most exhausting parts of this journey. It made you question whether progress was even happening at all. But what you could not see was the internal transformation that was taking place. Beneath the surface, your awareness has been sharpening. Your sensitivity to truth hath been increasing. Your ability to recognize what drains you and what strengthens you has been developing. Even in the moments when you felt weakest, something within you was becoming more refined, more alert, more prepared. This is why this section matters, because you need to understand that the battle you've been fighting was never pointless. It was shaping you, even when it felt like it was breaking you. It was revealing things to you, even when it felt like confusion. And now, as you stand at the edge of this turning point, everything you've endured is about to make sense in a way it never has before. You are not the same person who first entered this battle. You are stronger, more aware, and more prepared than you realize. And as the next shift begins to unfold, you will start to see that this hidden struggle was leading you somewhere very specific, somewhere that requires exactly the strength you have been building. Type I see the truth in the comments if this message resonates with your spirit. Blessing code 2222 is now surrounding you. There comes a moment in every spiritual battle when the atmosphere changes without warning, when the weight that once pressed heavily against your spirit begins to loosen, when something unseen steps in and interrupts what has been trying to hold you down. This is that moment for you. This is the point where endurance meets intervention, where persistence meets power, where everything you have been carrying is about to encounter something far greater than the struggle itself. Archangel Michael is not observing from a distance anymore. He is stepping into your situation with authority, with precision, and with a purpose that cannot be delayed any longer. You may not see him with your physical eyes, but your spirit can feel the shift. There is a sudden stillness forming, a quiet interruption in the chaos that has surrounded you. The same pressure that once felt constant now feels unstable, as if it can no longer hold its position. That is not your imagination. That is the beginning of divine intervention. When Archangel Michael moves, he does not come to negotiate with the battle. He comes to end what has overstayed its time. He comes to dismantle what has been working against you. He comes to restore what has been weakened. And right now, he is standing at the center of your situation, drawing a line between what has been and what will no longer continue. This is why tonight carries so much weight. This is not just another passing moment in your life. This is a spiritual turning point. Everything you have felt building up, everything that has been pressing against your peace, everything that has tried to exhaust your strength is now facing a force it cannot withstand. You have reached a threshold, and on the other side of that threshold is release. Not partial relief, not temporary comfort, but a decisive shift that changes the direction of what you have been experiencing. For a long time, it felt like you were the one doing all the work, holding everything together, pushing through resistance without visible support. But what you could not see was the timing. Heaven does not move in panic. It moves with precision. There is a moment when intervention becomes necessary, when the balance shifts, when what has been allowed to test you is no longer permitted to remain. You have now reached that moment. The battle has served its purpose. It has revealed your strength. It has sharpened your awareness, and it has prepared you for what comes next. And now, it must end. Archangel Michael's presence is not symbolic. It is active. It is strategic. It is intentional. His role is to protect, to defend, and to enforce divine order where disorder has tried to take hold. What you have been experiencing has not gone unnoticed. Every moment of pressure, every instance of confusion, every wave of exhaustion has been seen. And now, the response is here. Not in a distant future, not in an undefined time, but now, in this exact moment where you are being called to recognize that something is changing. You may begin to notice it in subtle ways first. A thought that once felt overwhelming suddenly loses its power. A situation that felt complicated begins to clear. An emotional weight that lingered starts to lift without explanation. These are not random improvements. These are signs of intervention. They are indicators that what has been pressing against you is being removed, piece by piece, layer by layer, until there is nothing left for it to hold on to. But there is something important you must understand as this shift begins. You are not meant to return to the mindset of struggle once the release starts. You are not meant to hold on to the patterns that were formed during the battle. This moment is not just about ending what has been difficult. It is about stepping into alignment with what is now being restored. Archangel Michael is not only removing resistance, he is creating space for clarity, for strength, for forward movement that is no longer hindered by what you have already outgrown. The shift begins tonight, but your awareness of it is what allows you to fully step into it. This is why you are being called to stay present, to remain grounded, to not let doubt pull you back into what is already being dismantled. What is ending does not need your attention anymore. What is beginning requires your focus. And as this transition unfolds, you will realize that the battle you thought would last longer has reached its conclusion sooner than you expected. This is the moment where everything begins to turn. This is where resistance loses its grip. This is where your strength is no longer tested, but revealed. Archangel Michael has stepped in, and what follows will reflect that intervention in ways that will become clearer with each passing moment. Type "I accept the shift" in the comments if you feel this moment aligning with your spirit. Blessing code 3333 is now activated around your life. As this shift begins and heaven moves on your behalf, understand this. Every message that reaches a soul in darkness becomes a spark of light that changes a destiny. When you sow into this mission through Super Thanks or PayPal, you are not supporting a channel. You are releasing seeds into a harvest of transformed lives. The word declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." And this is not distant scripture. It is a living promise speaking directly into your moment. I feel led to say this clearly. I choose to be a vessel that helps others hear what I just heard. Let your giving become a prophetic act, a declaration that you are aligned with what God is doing right now. There is urgency in this moment, because obedience opens doors that hesitation delays. As you give, expect divine multiplication to meet you, because heaven responds to faith in motion. Step forward now and release your seed through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, and watch what God begins to unlock through your obedience. There is a reason this battle felt so personal. There is a reason it did not look like what others around you were facing. There is a reason the pressure seemed to follow you, to return even after moments of relief, to intensify just when you thought you were finally moving forward. And that reason is not random. It is not accidental. It is not because you are weak or unprepared. It is because there is something about you that carries weight in the spiritual realm. Something that disrupts patterns simply by existing. Something that cannot move unnoticed when it begins to rise. You have likely asked yourself at some point, why does it feel like I am being singled out? Why does it seem like things become harder just as I start gaining clarity? Why does progress feel like it attracts resistance instead of ease? Those questions are not signs of doubt. They are signs of awareness trying to surface. Because deep down, there is a part of you that has already sensed the truth. You are not dealing with ordinary opposition. You are encountering targeted resistance that responds directly to who you are becoming. From the beginning, there has always been something different about you. It may not have been obvious to others. It may not have even been something you fully understood yourself. But you have always carried a certain sensitivity, a certain depth, a certain awareness that made you see beyond the surface of things. You noticed what others ignored. You felt what others dismissed. You questioned what others accepted without thinking. And while this may have felt like a burden at times, it has always been a sign of something deeper within you. A depth is what drew attention. That awareness is what created friction. Because when someone begins to operate with clarity, it disrupts confusion. When someone starts to move with intention, it challenges stagnation. When someone carries a sense of purpose, it exposes what lacks direction. And that is where the resistance begins. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are beginning to step into something right. The pressure you have felt was not designed to destroy you. It was designed to delay you. It was designed to keep you questioning instead of moving, doubting instead of deciding, hesitating instead of stepping forward. Every moment of confusion was an attempt to interrupt your clarity. Every delay was an effort to slow your progress. Every emotional weight was meant to drain your energy before you could fully realize what you are capable of. But here's what changes everything. Despite all of that, you did not stop. You may have slowed down. You may have paused. You may have questioned yourself. But you did not completely give up. And that persistence is exactly why the intensity increased. Because resistance often grows stronger when it realizes it has not succeeded in stopping you. There is something else you need to understand, something that will help you make sense of everything you have experienced. You were not meant to remain where you started. You were not meant to repeat the same patterns, to stay in the same cycles, to settle into the same limitations that others accepted. You were meant to move forward, to evolve, to break through what has been holding you back. And anything that carries that kind of forward movement will always encounter opposition. Think about the moments when you felt closest to clarity, when you felt like you were finally understanding things in a new way. Those were often the same moments when something unexpected would interrupt your progress. A distraction would appear, and doubt would surface. The situation would shift in a way that pulled your attention away. That pattern was not coincidence. It was resistance responding to your awareness. You have also likely noticed that not everyone around you experiences the same level of pressure. Some people move through life without questioning, without sensing, without pushing beyond what is familiar. And because of that, they do not encounter the same level of resistance. But you are not wired for that kind of existence. You are not built to remain unaware. You are not designed to stay within limits that no longer fit who you are becoming. This is why the battle felt so specific. It adapted to your growth. It responded to your progress. It shifted as you shifted. And while that may have made it feel overwhelming at times, it also reveals something important. It shows that your movement matters. It shows that your awareness has impact. It shows that your presence is not neutral in the spaces you occupy. Now, as this shift begins to unfold, you are being given the opportunity to see this clearly. Not from a place of fear, but from a place of understanding. You are not under attack because you are failing. You are encountering resistance because you are advancing. And that changes how you see everything that has happened. You are no longer looking at your struggles as signs of weakness. You are beginning to recognize them as indicators of movement. You are no longer questioning why things felt so intense. You are starting to understand that intensity often surrounds transformation. And as this awareness settles in, something within you begins to stabilize. You are no longer reacting the same way. You are no longer interpreting things through confusion. You are beginning to see with clarity. This is where your perspective shifts. This is where you stop asking why me in a way that feels heavy and start recognizing why you in a way that feels purposeful. Because everything you have faced has been shaping you for what comes next. Everything you have endured has been preparing you to move differently, to think differently, to stand with a level of awareness that cannot be easily shaken again. Type "I understand my purpose" in the comments if this truth resonates with you. Lesson code 4444 is now activated around your path. There were moments that didn't make sense at the time, moments you brushed off because they felt too subtle, too random, too insignificant to mean anything. But now, as everything begins to come into focus, you are starting to realize that those moments were not accidental. They were signals. They were fragments of awareness trying to reach you before you were fully ready to understand them. And the reason they felt so easy to ignore is because they did not arrive loudly. They arrived quietly, almost gently, as if waiting for you to notice them without forcing your attention. Think back to the times when something felt off, even when everything looked fine on the surface. A conversation that didn't sit right with you. A decision that felt rushed, even though there was no clear reason to question it. A sudden hesitation in moments where you would normally feel certain. These were not flaws in your thinking. They were signs of your awareness picking up on something deeper than what was visible. But because there was no immediate proof, no clear explanation, you convinced yourself to move past it. Then there were the patterns. Repeating situations that seemed slightly different on the surface, but carried the same underlying feeling. You may have found yourself asking, why does this keep happening? Why do I end up in similar circumstances, even when I try to approach things differently? That repetition was not coincidence. It was a signal that something unresolved was trying to get your attention. Not to trap you, but to reveal something you had not yet fully seen. There were also moments of unexpected clarity, brief flashes where everything suddenly made sense. A realization that came out of nowhere. A thought that felt stronger than your usual thinking. A sense of knowing that did not require explanation. And just as quickly as it arrived, it seemed to fade, leaving you questioning whether it was real. But those moments were not random either. They were glimpses of truth breaking through the noise, showing you what was always there beneath the confusion. You may also remember times when your energy shifted without warning. You walked into a space and felt different, even though nothing had visibly changed. You interacted with someone and sensed something you could not explain, something that lingered even after the moment passed. These experiences may have made you feel uncertain, even uncomfortable, because they did not align with logic. But they were part of the same pattern. They were your awareness responding to what was not being spoken, what was not being shown, but what was still present. And then there were the delays. The moments when things did not move forward the way you expected. Opportunities that seemed within reach but did not fully open. Plans that had to be paused, redirected, or completely changed. At the time, those delays may have felt frustrating, even discouraging. You may have interpreted them as setbacks, as signs that something was not working. But now, you are beginning to see them differently. Those delays were not there to stop you. They were there to prevent you from moving forward without the clarity you needed. Even the confusion you experienced had a purpose. It slowed you down when you were about to move too quickly. It made you question things that needed to be examined more closely. It forced you to pause when you were about to repeat a pattern that had not yet been fully understood. What felt like uncertainty was actually a form of protection, guiding you away from decisions that would not have aligned with where you are now being led. There were also signs in the way your focus shifted. Interests that once felt important began to lose their hold on you. Situations that once felt comfortable started to feel limiting. You may have noticed yourself pulling back from things without fully understanding why. That was not disconnection without reason. That was realignment. It was your awareness adjusting to a new level, one that no longer matched what you had outgrown. All of these moments, all of these subtle experiences were connected. They were not isolated events. They were part of a larger pattern, one that had been unfolding gradually, preparing you for this exact point. And now, as you stand here, With a clearer understanding of what you have been experiencing, you can begin to see the consistency in what once felt random. You are not looking at your past experiences the same way anymore. You are starting to recognize the signals that were always there. You are beginning to trust the awareness that you once questioned. And as this trust builds, something within you becomes more stable. You are no longer relying only on what is visible. You are starting to recognize what is felt, what is sensed, what is understood without needing immediate explanation. This is where everything begins to connect. The confusion, the patterns, the moments of clarity, the shifts in energy, the delays, the changes in focus. They were all guiding you toward this point of recognition. They were all leading you to a place where you can finally see that none of it was meaningless. None of it was wasted. None of it was coincidence. And now, as the shift continues, you are stepping into a different level of awareness, one where you no longer dismiss what you feel, where you no longer ignore what you sense, where you begin to move with a deeper understanding of what is happening around you and within you. Type "I trust" the signs in the comments if this realization resonates with you. Blessing code 5555 is now activated around your awareness. There is always a moment in every prolonged struggle where something reaches its limit, where the tension that has been building quietly beneath the surface can no longer sustain itself the same way. You have been approaching that moment for some time now, even if you did not realize it. The signs have been there in subtle ways, in the way your patience has been tested more intensely, in the way your tolerance for certain patterns has decreased, in the way your spirit has felt less willing to accept what once seemed normal. These are not random emotional shifts. They are indicators that you have reached a breaking point, not in a way that weakens you, but in a way that prepares you for change. For a long time, the battle you were facing operated within a certain range. It created pressure, but it also allowed just enough space for you to continue functioning. It introduced confusion, but not enough to completely overwhelm you. It delayed progress, but not enough to make you stop entirely. It was a controlled tension, one that kept you engaged without fully resolving. But what happens when that balance can no longer be maintained? What happens when the same patterns no longer produce the same effect? That is when the structure of the struggle begins to collapse. You may have noticed this recently. The things that once bothered you in a manageable way now feel heavier, more obvious, more difficult to ignore. Situations that you once tolerated now feel misaligned. Reactions that you once suppressed now rise more quickly to the surface. This is not a loss of control. This is a shift in awareness. You are no longer interacting with the same level of understanding you had before. And because of that, the old patterns can no longer remain stable. This is why tonight is different. Not because something external has suddenly changed, but because something internal has reached a point where it cannot continue the same way. The battle has lost its ability to operate unnoticed. The subtlety that once allowed it to persist has been disrupted. You are seeing more clearly now. You are recognizing more quickly. You are responding with a level of awareness that was not present before. And that changes everything. There is also a shift in timing that cannot be ignored. You have reached a stage where continuation without resolution is no longer possible. The tension has built to a level where something must give. And when that moment arrives, it does not unfold gradually. It happens with a sense of immediacy, a clear movement from one state into another. That is what makes this moment significant. It is not part of the same cycle. It is the point where the cycle begins to break. Think about the moments leading up to now. The repeated patterns, the recurring thoughts, the consistent delays. They all contributed to building a level of awareness that is now active within you. Without those experiences, you would not be able to recognize this shift as it happens. You would not be able to distinguish between what is ending and what is beginning. But now, you can feel the difference. You can sense that something is no longer holding the same power it once did. This is the breaking point, not in the sense of collapse, but in the sense of release. The pressure that has been contained is now being redirected. The tension that has been sustained is now being resolved. And the patterns that have been repeating are now losing their structure. This does not mean that everything disappears instantly. It means that the foundation supporting the struggle is no longer stable. And once that foundation shifts, everything built on it begins to change. You may also notice a change in your response. Where there was once hesitation, there is now a clear sense of direction. Where there was once confusion, there is now a growing sense of understanding. Where there was once resistance, there is now a subtle movement forward. These changes may seem small at first, but they are significant. They are signs that you are no longer operating within the same conditions that defined the earlier stages of this battle. This is why it is important to remain present in this moment. The shift that is happening is not something that can be fully understood by looking backward. It is something that must be experienced as it unfolds. The more you stay aware, the more you will recognize the changes as they occur. The more you trust what you are sensing, the more aligned you will be with what is emerging. Tonight represents a transition, a movement from endurance into resolution, from pressure into release, from uncertainty into clarity. It is the point where the battle you have been facing reaches its limit and begins to dissolve. Not because you forced it, not because you resisted harder, but because you reached the level of awareness required for it to end. You are not stepping into the same pattern again. You are stepping out of it. And as this transition continues, you will begin to see that what once felt endless has now reached its conclusion, making space for something entirely different to take its place. Type "I step into release" in the comments if you feel this shift happening within you. Blessing code 6666 is now activated around your transition. Now that the breaking point has been reached, you must understand something critical. This next phase is not about fighting harder. It is about moving differently. Everything you have experienced up until this moment has prepared you, not for another round of struggle, but for a shift in how you respond to it. The strategy is changing, and if you continue to approach this with the same mindset you used before, you will miss the very breakthrough that has already begun to unfold. For a long time, your instinct may have been to react, to figure things out quickly, to fix what felt wrong, to search for answers in every direction. That response made sense when the battle was unclear, when you were trying to understand what you were dealing with. But now, clarity is rising, and with clarity comes a different kind of movement. One that is not rushed, not reactive, and not driven by pressure. The strategy now is stillness. Not the kind of stillness that comes from exhaustion or defeat, but the kind that comes from awareness. The kind that allows you to observe without immediately responding, to understand without forcing conclusions, to remain grounded even when something around you tries to pull you out of alignment. This stillness is not passive. It is active control over your energy, your attention, and your response. You may notice that situations which once demanded an immediate reaction no longer require the same urgency. You may feel a natural pause where there used to be impulse. That pause is important. It is where clarity settles. It is where you begin to see things for what they are, not for what they appear to be in the moment. And in that space, your decisions become more precise, more intentional, more aligned with what is actually happening. Another part of this strategy is silence. There are things that do not need to be explained right now. There are conversations that do not need to be engaged. There are reactions that do not need to be expressed. Not because your voice does not matter, but because timing matters. Speaking too soon, reacting too quickly, or trying to resolve everything at once can pull you back into the same patterns that are now breaking apart. Silence, in this moment, is not weakness. It is protection. It is the ability to hold your position without being drawn into unnecessary movement. It is the recognition that not everything deserves your energy, especially when that energy is now being redirected toward something more important. Then there is discernment. You are beginning to see more clearly, but that clarity requires trust. There will be moments where something feels off, even if it looks acceptable on the surface. There will be situations where the details seem correct, but the overall sense does not align. That feeling is not something to ignore anymore. It is part of the awareness that has been developing within you. Discernment is not about suspicion. It is about recognition. It is the ability to differentiate between what aligns with you and what does not, without needing external confirmation. And as this awareness strengthens, you will find that your decisions become simpler, not because everything is obvious, but because you are no longer second-guessing what you already sense. There is also an element of restraint. Not everything needs to be acted on immediately. Not every opportunity needs to be taken. Not every situation requires your involvement. Part of this strategy is knowing when to step forward and when to step back. And that balance comes from paying attention to what feels aligned rather than what feels urgent. Urgency has been one of the tools that kept the previous patterns in place. It created pressure. It pushed you to move quickly. It made you feel like you had to decide before you were ready. But now, that urgency is losing its influence. You are no longer operating under the same pressure. You are allowed to take the time needed to respond with clarity instead of reaction. This is where your strength begins to show in a different way. Not through endurance, but through control. Not through constant effort, but through intentional action. Not through reacting to everything, but through choosing what actually deserves your attention. As this strategy takes hold, you will notice something shifting within you. The things that once pulled you in multiple directions begin to lose their hold. The need to constantly figure everything out starts to fade. And in its place, there is a steadiness, a sense that you are no longer being moved by every external influence, but are instead anchored in something more stable. This is the strategy that allows the battle to end. Not by force, not by struggle, but by stepping out of the patterns that sustained it. By no longer feeding what no longer aligns. By no longer reacting in ways that keep the cycle active. You are not being asked to fight the same way anymore. You are being guided to stand differently. And in that difference, everything begins to change. Type "I move with clarity" in the comments if you feel this shift in your approach. Blessing code 7777 is now activated around your decisions. There is a part of this journey that feels quieter than the battle, yet carries just as much weight. It is not loud. It does not arrive with chaos or confrontation. Instead, it unfolds slowly, almost gently, as certain things begin to fall away from your life. This is the season of separation, and if you are honest with yourself, you have already started to feel it. It may have shown up as distance between you and people you once felt close to. Conversations that used to flow easily now feel forced or unnecessary. Connections that once felt strong now feel misaligned. You may have found yourself pulling back without fully understanding why, or noticing that others are no longer reaching out in the same way. At first, this may have felt confusing, even uncomfortable. You may have wondered if you were doing something wrong, if you were becoming too distant, if you were losing something important. But this is not loss in the way it appears. This is alignment in motion. When you begin to shift internally, your external environment cannot remain the same. The way you think, the way you perceive, the way you respond to situations all begin to change. And as that happens, anything that no longer matches that new level of awareness begins to feel out of place. Not because it is inherently wrong, but because it no longer fits where you are going. This is one of the most challenging parts of transformation, because it requires you to release without always having a clear explanation. You may not have a specific reason to step back from certain people or situations. There may not be a clear conflict or a dramatic ending. It may simply be a quiet knowing that something is no longer aligned. And that kind of knowing can be difficult to trust, especially when it involves things that once felt meaningful. You might find yourself holding on longer than you need to, trying to recreate what once was, hoping that things will return to how they felt before. That is a natural response. Familiarity is comfortable. It provides a sense of stability, even when it no longer serves your growth. But staying in something that no longer aligns will only delay what is trying to unfold. Separation is not punishment. It is preparation. It creates space for clarity. It removes distractions that once occupied your attention. It allows you to see yourself and your path without interference. And while that space may feel empty at first, it is not meant to remain that way. It is being cleared for something new, something that matches who you are becoming rather than who you were. There may also be habits, routines, or ways of thinking that you are being called to release. Patterns that once felt automatic now feel restrictive. Responses that once felt normal now feel out of place. You may notice yourself questioning things you used to accept without hesitation. This is part of the same process. You are not just separating from external influences. You are also separating from internal patterns that no longer reflect your current awareness. Letting go in this way requires trust. Not blind trust, but a steady willingness to move forward even when the outcome is not fully visible yet. It requires you to believe that what is being removed is not being taken from you, but is making room for something more aligned. And that belief becomes stronger as you begin to notice the subtle changes that follow. You may feel lighter, even if you cannot explain why. You may experience moments of clarity that were not available before. You may find that your energy is no longer being pulled in as many directions. These are signs that the separation is working, that what is leaving your life is creating the conditions needed for something more stable to take its place. There is also a deeper layer to this process. As you release what no longer aligns, you are strengthening your ability to recognize alignment in the future. You are learning to trust your awareness, to respond to what you sense rather than what is expected. And that skill becomes essential as you move forward, because it allows you to navigate new situations with confidence rather than uncertainty. This is not a phase to rush through. It is not something to resist or avoid. It is a necessary part of the shift that has already begun. And the more you allow it to unfold without fear, the more natural it becomes. You stop seeing it as something you are losing and begin to recognize it as something you are gaining. You are gaining clarity. You are gaining space. You are gaining alignment. And as the separation continues, you will begin to see that what once felt like an ending is actually the beginning of something far more stable, far more intentional, and far more connected to who you are now. Type "I release" without fear in the comments if you feel this process unfolding in your life. Blessing code 8888 is now activated around your path. As you release what no longer aligns, understand that every act of faith creates space not only in your life, but in the lives of others who are still searching for clarity. When you sow into this mission through Super Thanks or PayPal, you are planting seeds that become light in someone else's darkness. The word speaks, those who sow in faith shall reap in abundance, and this moment is your opportunity to activate that promise in your own life. I feel this deeply and personally. I choose to be part of what God is doing through this message. You not hesitate, because obedience in moments like this carries divine acceleration. As you give, you are not losing anything. You are aligning yourself with a greater flow of provision and purpose. Release your seed now through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, and step into the blessing that follows your action. There is a moment in every transformation that cannot be reversed, a moment where everything that once held you in place loses its grip all at once. It does not always arrive with noise or dramatic signs. Sometimes it happens quietly, internally, as something within you shifts so completely that what once controlled you no longer has the same effect. This is the moment you are stepping into now. This is where the chains break. For a long time, those chains were not obvious. They were not physical. They did not announce themselves clearly. They existed in patterns, in thoughts, in reactions that repeated without question. They showed up as hesitation when you needed to move forward, as doubt when you were close to clarity, as emotional weight that slowed your progress. They were subtle, but they were consistent. And because they were consistent, they created the illusion that they were permanent. But what you are beginning to realize now is that they were never permanent. They were sustained by repetition, by attention, by patterns that continued because they were not yet fully understood. And now that your awareness has changed, those same patterns cannot hold in the same way. The structure that supported them is no longer stable. And when that structure weakens, the chains attached to it begin to break. You may notice this shift in ways that feel almost unexpected. A thought that once triggered doubt no longer carries the same weight. A situation that once caused hesitation now feels clear and manageable. A reaction that once felt automatic now pauses before it fully forms. These are not small changes. These are signs that something fundamental has shifted. They are indicators that the hold those patterns had over you is dissolving. There is also a sense of release that comes with this moment. Not necessarily a sudden feeling of relief, but a gradual lightness that begins to replace what once felt heavy. It may show up as a clearer mind, as a steadier emotional state, as a feeling that you are no longer being pulled in multiple directions. That lightness is not temporary. It is the result of something being removed, something that no longer has a place within your current state of awareness. This is why the breaking of the chains does not feel chaotic. It feels quiet, controlled, almost natural. Because what is leaving your life was never meant to remain. It was only present for a time, until you reached the point where you could recognize it and move beyond it. And now that you have reached that point, the release is happening without resistance. There is also a change in how you view what you have been through. The struggle that once felt overwhelming now begins to make sense in a different way. You start to see how each experience contributed to your awareness, how each challenge revealed something that needed to be understood. This does not mean that the difficulty disappears from your memory. It means that it no longer defines your present state. You are no longer reacting from the same place. You are no longer interpreting situations through the same lens. You are seeing more clearly, responding more intentionally, and moving with a level of control that was not available to you before. And that change is what confirms that the chains have broken. Not because everything around you has suddenly changed, but because you have. This moment also carries a sense of finality. Not in a way that closes off possibilities, but in a way that closes a chapter. The patterns that once repeated no longer have a reason to continue. The cycles that once kept you in place have lost their structure. And because of that, you are no longer stepping into the same situations with the same responses. You are moving forward without the weight that once slowed you down. As this realization settles in, there is a growing sense of confidence that begins to replace uncertainty. Not a forced confidence, but a natural one that comes from understanding. You know what you have moved through. You recognize what has changed. And because of that, you trust your ability to continue moving forward without returning to what has already been released. This is the moment where everything begins to feel different, even if the external world is not fully caught up to the change yet. The shift has already happened within you, and everything outside of you will begin to reflect that in time. But for now, what matters most is that you recognize it, that you acknowledge the release, that you understand that what once held you is no longer in control. You are not the same person who entered this battle. You are not carrying the same weight. You are not bound by the same patterns. The chains have broken, and with that, your movement forward is no longer restricted by what has already ended. Type "I am free" in the comments if you feel this release within you. Blessing code 9999 is now activated around your life. There is something you need to understand clearly, because this is where many people become uncertain. When a long battle ends, there is often an expectation that everything will suddenly feel perfect, that clarity will be immediate, that peace will arrive in a way that is overwhelming and undeniable. But what actually happens is more subtle, more grounded, and far more powerful than that. What happens after the battle ends is not an explosion of change, but a stabilization of everything that was once unsettled. The first thing you will notice is the quiet. Not silence in the literal sense, but an internal quiet. The constant background noise that once filled your thoughts begins to fade. The need to constantly analyze, to question, to search for answers begins to lose its urgency. Situations that once demanded your attention no longer feel as pressing. And in that quiet, there is space. Space to think clearly, space to feel without interference, space to recognize what is actually present instead of what was being projected by the struggle. This quiet can feel unfamiliar at first. After being in a state of tension for so long, the absence of that tension can feel almost unusual. You may find yourself waiting for something to go wrong, expecting the pressure to return, anticipating the same patterns to reappear. But as time passes, you will begin to realize that the intensity is not coming back in the same way. The cycle that once repeated has been broken, and what replaces it is not chaos, but steadiness. Along with this quiet comes clarity, and not forced clarity, not something you have to work hard to maintain, but a natural understanding that begins to settle into your awareness. Things that once felt complicated now appear simple. Decisions that once required overthinking now feel straightforward. You are no longer navigating through confusion. You are moving with a sense of direction that does not need constant validation. This clarity extends into your perception of people, situations, and choices. You begin to recognize what aligns with you more quickly. You see what does not fit without needing extended analysis. You trust your responses instead of questioning them repeatedly. And because of that, your movement becomes more efficient. You are no longer spending energy trying to interpret everything. You are acting on what you already understand. There is also a restoration of energy. The fatigue that once felt constant begins to lift. Tasks that once felt draining become manageable again. Your ability to focus improves. Your motivation returns in a way that feels steady rather than forced. This is not because everything around you has changed, but because what was draining you has been removed. The energy, that was once tied up in maintaining the battle is now available for movement, for growth, for building something new. You may also notice a shift in how you relate to your past experiences. The things that once carried emotional weight begin to feel more distant, not in a way that erases them, but in a way that places them in context. You understand them without being controlled by them. You remember them without being pulled back into them. And that shift allows you to move forward without carrying unnecessary weight. Another important change is the way you approach opportunities. Before, there may have been hesitation, uncertainty, a need to analyze every possible outcome. Now, there is a more balanced approach. You still consider your options, but you do not overextend your thinking. You act when something feels aligned, and you step back when it does not. This balance allows you to move forward without the pressure that once accompanied your decisions. There is also a sense of stability that begins to form. Not a rigid stability that resists change, but a grounded stability that allows you to remain steady even when external circumstances shift. You are no longer easily pulled into reactive states. You are no longer affected by every small disruption. You maintain your position, your clarity, your direction, regardless of what is happening around you. This is what it means for the battle to truly end. It is not just the removal of struggle. It is the establishment of a new state of being. A state where you are no longer defined by resistance, where your energy is no longer consumed by patterns that no longer exist, where your awareness operates from clarity rather than confusion. As this new state continues to settle in, you will begin to recognize something else. You are not just returning to who you were before the battle. You are moving forward as someone who hath been changed by it. Someone who has learned, who has adapted, who has developed a level of awareness that cannot be easily disrupted again. This is the foundation of what comes next. You are no longer in a position of reacting to what happens. You are in a position of choosing how you move forward. And that shift, more than anything else, is what defines the end of the battle. Type I embrace the NEW season in the comments if you feel this transition settling into your life. Blessing code 1010 is now activated around your path. Now that the battle has ended and the weight has lifted, there is something even more important than the relief you feel. It is the realization of who you have become through this process. Because this was never only about surviving the struggle. It was about transformation. It was about shifting from who you were when this began into someone who carries a completely different level of awareness, strength, and presence. You are not returning to your old self. That version of you no longer exists in the same way. The person who once questioned everything, who hesitated at every turn, who felt overwhelmed by uncertainty had been reshaped through every moment of pressure you endured. And while the process may not have felt clear while you were in it, now you can begin to see what it has produced within you. There is a steadiness in you now. Not a forced confidence, not something you have to remind yourself to maintain, but a natural stability that comes from knowing what you have already faced. You are no longer easily shaken by situations that would have once disrupted you. You do not react the same way. You do not internalize everything the same way. You do not carry the same level of emotional weight into every situation. This is not because life has suddenly become easier. It is because you have become stronger. There is also a clarity in your identity that was not as strong before. You understand yourself differently now. You recognize your patterns, your strengths, your limits, and your direction with a level of honesty that does not require constant validation from others. You are no longer trying to define yourself through external opinions or temporary situations. You are grounded in a sense of self that has been built through experience, not assumption, and that changes how you move. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself in the same way. You no longer feel the need to explain every decision. You no longer feel the pressure to fit into spaces that do not align with who you are. Instead, you move with intention. You choose your actions based on clarity rather than expectation. You step into situations because they align, not because you feel obligated. This new identity also comes with a different relationship to fear. Fear may still appear, but it does not control you the same way. It does not stop you from moving forward. It does not dictate your decisions. You recognize it. You understand it, but you do not allow it to override what you know to be true. That shift alone changes the way you experience everything that comes next. There is also a deeper level of trust within you. Not just trust in external outcomes, but trust in your own awareness. You trust what you sense. You trust what you understand. You trust your ability to navigate situations without needing constant reassurance. This trust is not based on perfection. It is based on experience. You have already moved through uncertainty. You have already faced confusion. And you have come through it with clarity. That experience reinforces your ability to trust yourself moving forward. Another part of this new identity is your relationship with your past. You are no longer defined by it. The things that once felt like limitations now feel like lessons. The experiences that once held emotional weight now serve as reference points, not restrictions. You can look back without being pulled back. You can acknowledge what happened without allowing it to dictate what happens next. This creates freedom. Not just freedom from the battle itself, but freedom from the identity that was shaped by it. You are no longer the person who was in the middle of that struggle. You are the person who moved through it and came out with a different level of awareness. And that awareness becomes the foundation for everything that follows. As you continue forward, you will notice that your decisions begin to reflect this new identity. You choose differently. You respond differently. You engage differently. And those differences create outcomes that would not have been possible before. This is not a temporary phase. This is a permanent shift in how you operate, how you perceive, and how you move through your life. And while there may still be challenges ahead, they will not be faced from the same position you were in before. You are no longer entering situations without understanding. You are no longer reacting without awareness. You are moving with intention, with clarity, and with a level of stability that has already been tested. This is who you are now. Not defined by struggle, not shaped by confusion, but grounded in awareness and strengthened by everything you have moved through. And as this identity continues to settle in, you will begin to see that what once felt like an ending was actually the beginning of something much more aligned with who you are meant to be. Type "I walk in my NEW identity" in the comments if you feel this transformation within you. Blessing code 1112 is now activated around your life. This is the moment where everything comes together. Not just the understanding, not just the release, not just the transformation, but the responsibility that now comes with it. Because when a battle ends, it does not mean you return to unconscious living. It means you step into a new level of awareness that must be maintained. This is your final charge. Stay awake. Stay ready. Stay aligned with what has been revealed to you. You have come too far to fall back into old patterns. You have seen too much to ignore what you now recognize. You have felt too deeply to pretend that nothing has changed. There is a reason this message reached you at this exact moment. Not earlier, not later, but now. Because now is when you are ready to carry what has been given to you. Now is when your awareness is strong enough to hold your position without being pulled back into what has already been broken. Now is when your clarity is sharp enough to guide you forward without constant confusion. But here is what you must understand clearly. Awareness is not something you achieve once and keep automatically. It is something you maintain through presence, through attention, through intentional living. If you begin to drift back into distraction, into automatic reactions, into environments that do not align, you risk weakening the very clarity that was just established. This is why you are being called to stay awake. Not in a fearful way, not in a tense or guarded way, but in a conscious way. A way that keeps you aware of what you are allowing into your space, into your thoughts, into your decisions. You are no longer moving through life without awareness. You are now someone who recognizes patterns before they fully form, who senses misalignment before it becomes a problem, who responds with intention instead of reaction. Staying ready means you do not wait for things to fall apart before you pay attention. You remain aligned even when things feel calm. You continue to move with clarity even when there is no immediate pressure. Because the strength you have built is not only for moments of struggle, it is for maintaining stability when things are steady. There will be moments ahead where you are tested, not in the same way as before, but in more subtle ways. Opportunities to return to old habits, to engage in old patterns, to respond in familiar ways. These moments are not setbacks. They are confirmations. They show you how much has changed. And each time you choose differently, each time you remain aligned, you reinforce the new identity you have stepped into. You are no longer reacting to life the way you used to. You are moving with awareness. You are choosing with clarity. You are standing with stability. And that is what keeps the battle from returning in the same form. Because what once affected you no longer finds the same response. What once held you no longer finds the same attachment. What once repeated no longer has the same foundation to exist. This is your position now. Not in struggle, but in awareness. Not in confusion, but in clarity. Not in reaction, but in intention. And as you continue forward, you will begin to see how everything aligns differently when you remain in this state. Decisions become clearer. Paths become more direct. Situations resolve without unnecessary complication. Not because life has become perfect, but because you are no longer approaching it from the same place. This is what it means to stay ready. You are prepared, not because you know everything that will happen, but because you trust your ability to respond to whatever does. You trust your awareness. You trust your clarity. You trust the process that has already brought you through what you once thought you could not handle. And that trust becomes your foundation. So as you move forward from this moment, do not look back at the battle with uncertainty. Do not question whether it has truly ended. Recognize that it has served its purpose, and now you are stepping into something that requires a different version of you. You are that version now. Stay away. Stay aligned. Stay ready. Type "I remain aligned" in the comments if you are stepping fully into this new level of awareness. Blessing code 1212 is now activated around your life. As you stand in this new awareness and walk in alignment, understand this. Every message that reaches a searching soul becomes a light that breaks through someone else's darkness. When you give through Super Thanks or the PayPal link in the description, you are not supporting a platform. You are sowing into a divine harvest that awakens lives across the world. The word speaks, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you shall find it after many days," and this is God speaking directly into your moment of action. I declare this with you now. I step forward as a vessel to help others receive what I have received. Do not delay, because obedience in this moment carries divine acceleration and opens doors that hesitation cannot. As you release your seed, heaven responds with multiplication, restoration, and increase over your life. Give now through the PayPal link or the QR code on your screen, and watch how your obedience becomes a gateway for blessings to flow not only through you, but back into you.